The SUV had barely stopped when Maya Williams walked straight up the front steps of 27 Hawthorne Lane and inserted the key. The brand new lock was jammed solid. Olivia, Maya's daughter, flipped the porch light switch, but nothing happened. Even though the phone app showed the power was still active, Maya quickly walked around the side of the house and found a Garrison Property Security seal placed across the breaker box. "Who changes the locks before the homeowner moves in?" Olivia asked. "Someone who doesn't want us inside," Maya replied. Patricia Whitmore approached with a folder and announced that the HOA had placed the house under a security hold. Immediately afterward, Gary's van arrived. He stepped out in a private security uniform, carrying a radio and locksmith tools, and blocked the driveway entrance. Maya took out her phone and made consecutive calls to the title company, the electric utility, and the county property records office. 3 written confirmations arrived immediately. Maya Williams was the sole legal owner, there were no outstanding liens, and there was no court order. She called an independent locksmith to remove Gary's lock and placed the entire removed cylinder in a sealed bag. As soon as the garage door opened, Maya discovered that the shelf in the corner had been pushed out of position. 4 drag marks and a dust-free rectangular area were clearly visible on the concrete floor. A large object had been moved from there shortly before they arrived. Across the street, looking through the garage door, Patricia's smile froze completely. Maya remained inside the garage and studied the empty space behind the shelf. Olivia stood beside her, looking from the marks on the floor to Patricia across the street. "You saw that, right?" Olivia asked. "I saw it. She knows what was here. We don't know that yet." Olivia lowered her voice. "Then why did she react like that?" Maya took several photographs of the floor, the shelf, and the surrounding area before touching anything. "Because something about this garage matters to her. That's all we can say for now." Olivia knew her mother well enough not to argue. When Maya spoke that way, she had already decided that guessing would only make things harder. Outside, Patricia crossed the street again. Gary followed several steps behind her. Patricia stopped near the garage entrance, but remained outside the property line. "Miss Williams, I strongly advise you not to disturb anything further." Maya turned toward her. "You've been trying to keep me from entering my own house since I arrived. Now that I'm inside, you're telling me not to touch it. Which part of this property do you believe the HOA owns?" Patricia held the folder against her side. "This is about community procedure. The county says the house belongs to me. The title company says the house belongs to me. There is no court order against the property. Your contractor changed my lock and interfered with access to the breaker box. If there is another legal issue, show me the document." Gary stepped forward. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Maya looked at him. "You changed a lock you had no permission to install. I followed an HOA request. That doesn't answer whether you had the homeowner's authorization." Gary said nothing. Patricia intervened. "The association has a duty to protect properties during ownership transitions. The ownership transition is finished. There are still compliance questions. Then send them in writing." Patricia's expression tightened again. "You seem determined to turn a simple administrative matter into a confrontation." Maya shook her head. "I've been asking for documentation since you walked over here." Olivia watched Patricia carefully. "And nobody has explained the power." Gary looked toward the breaker box. "The service was never disconnected," Olivia continued. "The utility company already confirmed that." Patricia glanced at Gary. The exchange lasted only a moment, but Maya noticed it. Gary spoke first. "Electrical access isn't my department." Olivia looked at the company's seal still visible on the side of the house. "Your name is on the box." Gary's face hardened. "That seal is a security marker." "For what?" Maya asked. He did not answer. Maya turned away from them and looked again at the empty, rectangular space on the garage floor. The dragged shelf was one problem. The missing object was another. Whoever had moved it had done so recently enough that the dust pattern had not settled evenly. She checked the photos on her phone and made sure the timestamps were visible. Patricia noticed. "What are you doing?" "Documenting the condition of my property." "There's no need for that." Maya looked at her. "That's an unusual thing to say after someone changed my locks." Patricia did not respond. A few residents had begun watching from nearby driveways. None came closer. but several were clearly listening. Patricia seemed to notice them too. Her tone became more formal. "I will be notifying the board that you refuse to cooperate with a security review." Maya nodded. "Put that in writing too." Patricia stared at her for a moment, then closed the folder. "We'll be in contact." She turned toward the street. Gary stayed where he was. Maya looked at him. "Is there something else?" He lowered his voice. "You should have waited for the HOA to clear this. I was cleared when the sale closed. You don't understand how things work here." Maya held his gauze. "Then explain it." Gary gave no answer. He walked back toward his van. Olivia waited until both of them were across the street before speaking. "They're hiding something." Maya looked toward the garage floor. "Maybe." "Mom." Maya finally faced her daughter. "We know somebody changed the lock. We know somebody interfered with the breaker box. We know something heavy was removed from this garage before we arrived. Those are facts." And Patricia knew exactly where to look. Maya glanced across the street. Patricia was standing beside Gary's van, speaking quietly to him. Her attention kept returning to the garage. Maya closed the photo app on her phone. "Then we pay attention to what she does next." Olivia looked at the unopened moving boxes stacked near the garage wall. This was supposed to be moving day. It still is. Maya picked up the first box and carried it toward the kitchen. But before leaving the garage, she looked once more at the dust-free rectangle on the concrete floor. Someone had removed something from 27 Hawthorne Lane, and whatever it was, Patricia Whitmore did not want Maya to find it. Maya carried the box into the kitchen, while Olivia stayed near the garage, watching Patricia and Gary across the street. The moving crew had started unloading again, but the atmosphere had changed. What should have been a routine Saturday move now felt like a dispute that could escalate without warning. Maya set the box on the counter and checked her phone. The title, confirmation, utility notice, county property record, and photographs from the garage were all saved. She created a separate folder for everything connected to the house and added the photographs of the removed lock. Olivia came inside. "Gary's still out there." "Doing what?" "Sitting in his van." Maya glanced through the kitchen window. Gary had moved farther down Hawthorne Lane but had not left the neighborhood. "He can sit there." Olivia folded her arms. "You're really not bothered by this?" "I'm bothered. I'm just not going to let him decide what I do because of it." One of the movers entered carrying a box marked kitchen. He asked where she wanted it, and Maya directed him toward the dining area. The simple exchange helped restore some order. They still had furniture to bring in, boxes to sort, and an entire house to organize. Olivia opened a bag from a nearby deli and handed Maya a turkey sandwich and bottled iced tea. "You haven't eaten anything." Maya took the sandwich. "Neither have you." "I had coffee." "That's not lunch." They ate standing beside the kitchen island while the movers worked around them. Olivia had just started telling Maya where she wanted to put the coffee maker when both of their phones sounded. An email had arrived from the Crestwood Heights Homeowners Association. Olivia opened it first. "Listen to this. Security and property investigation underway at 27 Hawthorne Lane. Residents are advised not to interfere pending review." Maya stopped eating. Olivia looked toward the window. She sent that to the whole neighborhood. Maya read the email on her own phone. There was no specific accusation. It did not say the title was invalid or that Maya had committed any offense. It simply used enough official language to make the situation sound unresolved. "She's making it look like we're under investigation," Olivia said. "She's making people think there's a reason to avoid us. That's almost the same thing." "No. And the difference matters." Olivia stared at the message. Why would she do this? Maya saved the email with the other records. Because she couldn't keep us out of the house. So now she's trying to make everyone think we shouldn't be here. Maya looked toward the street. Several neighbors who had been watching earlier were still outside. One man near his mailbox glanced toward the house and quickly looked away. "She wants control of the story," Maya said. Before Olivia could respond, Gary's van started moving. He drove back toward the house and stopped near the driveway. Gary got out carrying 2 portable signs. He placed one near each side of the driveway entrance. "Restricted Access Security Review." Maya put down her sandwich and walked outside. "Remove those." Gary turned toward her. "They're temporary. They're on my property." They're part of an HOA security review. Maya pointed toward the sidewalk. Then put them on HOA property. Gary did not move. The association has instructed residents and contractors to stay away from this site until the situation is resolved. The situation was resolved when the county confirmed ownership. That's not what I'm talking about. Maya watched him carefully. Then what are you talking about? Gary hesitated. Patricia had not returned with him, and without her standing nearby, he seemed less certain about how much he should say. This property has issues you don't understand. What issues? You should have taken the hint when the key didn't work. Maya remained still. Gary's face changed as soon as the words left his mouth. The lock was a hint? I didn't say that. You just did. I said you should have waited for the HOA. That isn't what you said. Olivia had come outside and stopped several feet behind Maya. Gary reached down, picked up the first sign, and carried it toward his van. You're reading too much into it. Maya watched him retrieve the second one. You changed the lock. Your company's seal was on the breaker box, and now you're telling me the lock was supposed to send a message. I don't need to read much into that. Gary placed both signs in the van. Be careful what you accuse people of. I haven't accused you of anything. Gary looked at her. Maya continued. I'm repeating what happened. If you sympathize with Maya, who stayed calm and relied on facts, while Gary tried to intimidate her and keep her out of her own home, please like this video. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because someone near you may be watching Maya's story too. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next powerful stories. That ended the conversation. Gary got into the van, but instead of driving out of Crestwood Heights, he parked farther down the street again. Olivia watched him through the garage opening. He just admitted the lock wasn't about security. He admitted he expected us to understand it as a warning. That sounds worse. It might be, but we keep the difference clear. Olivia sighed. You always do that. Do what? Make me wait until every piece fits. Maya returned to the kitchen. That usually works better than forcing pieces together. A few minutes later, an older man from 2 houses down walked toward his mailbox. He looked toward Maya and raised one hand. Morning, Miss Williams. Good morning, sir. He seemed as though he wanted to say something else, but after a brief glance toward Gary's van, he collected his mail and returned home. Olivia noticed. So Patricia sends one email and everybody suddenly acts nervous. They've probably known her longer than they've known us. That doesn't make her right. No. It makes her familiar. Maya picked up her sandwich again, but before she could finish it, another message appeared on her phone. This one came directly from Patricia. Maya opened it. Olivia stepped closer. What now? Maya read the first line twice. The Crestwood Heights HOA had discovered that several internal financial records and association files were missing. Patricia was requesting immediate cooperation from the owner of 27 Hawthorne Lane. Olivia looked toward the garage. The thing that was moved. Maya did not answer immediately. Then, she saved the message with the others. Now we know what she wants us looking for. Patricia returned less than 20 minutes after sending the message. Gary walked beside her, carrying a black document case. Neither of them came onto the driveway. Maya met them near the garage entrance, while Olivia remained a few steps behind her. Patricia opened her folder. As I stated in the email, the association has discovered that several financial records are missing. What records? Maya asked. Reserve fund reconciliation files, vendor invoices, payment records, and a backup drive containing association documents. When were they last seen? Patricia looked down at the page in front of her. We're still confirming that. Where were they stored? That information is part of the review. Maya waited. Patricia looked up. The important issue is that some of those materials may have been moved during the transition of this property. Moved by whom? We don't know. Then why are you standing at my garage? Gary shifted beside her. Patricia kept her voice controlled. Because 27 Hawthorne Lane was vacant before you purchased it, and the association sometimes used properties under transition for temporary administrative storage. Maya looked toward the garage. That was the first direct explanation Patricia had offered for the empty space behind the shelf. You stored HOA records inside a privately owned house? It was vacant at the time. That wasn't my question. Patricia paused. The previous situation was different. Who authorized it? We're not here to discuss old storage arrangements. Maya nodded once. Then tell me what you are here to discuss. Patricia closed the folder. We need to inspect the garage. No. Olivia looked at her mother, then at Patricia. Patricia seemed surprised by how quickly Maya answered. If the missing records are not inside, an inspection would clear up the issue immediately. You don't have permission to search my house. This concerns association property. If you have evidence that association property is inside my home, give it to the police or obtain whatever legal authority you need. Gary stepped forward slightly. There's no reason to make this complicated. Maya looked at him. You changed my lock without permission. Your company's seal was on the breaker box. Now you want access to the garage after the HOA claims records are missing. I think clear boundaries are the simplest part of this situation. Gary's expression hardened. Patricia said, No one is accusing you of stealing anything. Then stop talking as if I need to prove I didn't. Patricia took a breath. Miss Williams, if you have nothing to hide, I don't understand why you would refuse a brief inspection. My right to say no doesn't depend on proving I have nothing to hide. The words ended the discussion for several seconds. Olivia glanced toward the street. A few residents were watching again. Patricia noticed them too and lowered her voice. You are creating unnecessary suspicion. No. You sent an email to the neighborhood suggesting this property was under investigation. You created the suspicion. Patricia did not answer that. Maya continued. Tell me when the records were last verified. I already said we're checking. Who had access to them? Several people. Name is? That's confidential. Was Gary one of them? Gary looked toward Patricia. Patricia responded. His company provides security and maintenance services for the HOA. That wasn't what I asked. Gary stepped in. I've had access to plenty of association property. That doesn't mean anything. Maya turned toward him. Did you have access to the missing records? I don't handle accounting. Did you have access to wherever they were stored? Gary looked at Patricia again. She answered for him. This is getting us nowhere. Maya noticed the exchange. Then we're finished. She turned toward the garage. Patricia spoke before she could walk away. If association property is found inside this house after you refused us access, that refusal will be documented. Maya stopped and looked back. Document everything. Patricia stared at her. Maya added, especially the part where you asked to search a private residence without the owner's consent. Gary gave a quiet laugh. You think paperwork is going to protect you from everything? No. I think paperwork makes it harder for people to change their story later. Patricia closed her folder sharply. We'll proceed through the proper channels. That's what I asked you to do this morning. Patricia turned and walked toward the street. Gary remained for another moment. You should be careful, he said. Maya did not move. About what? About assuming you understand what's going on. Then explain it. Gary looked toward the open garage. His eyes stopped briefly on the displaced shelf and the clean, rectangular area on the floor. Maya followed his gaze. When she looked back at him, he had already turned away. Gary crossed the street and joined Patricia. Olivia waited until they were near the van. He knows what was sitting there. He knows something about it. You're still doing that. Doing what? Refusing to say what's obvious. Maya walked back into the garage. Obvious and provable are not the same thing. Olivia followed. Maya opened the photographs she had taken earlier. She enlarged the image of the floor and checked the timestamp. Then she opened Patricia's email announcing the missing records. The email had been sent after Maya entered the house. Olivia noticed the time. Wait, if those files were already missing, why didn't she mention them when she was trying to keep us outside? Maya looked at the screen. That's a good question. She talked about compliance, security, HOA rules, not missing records. Exactly. Olivia leaned against one of the moving boxes. So either she didn't know they were missing this morning, or she didn't want to say why she needed us out. Maya saved screenshots of both timestamps in the same folder as the other records. Olivia looked toward the garage opening. Gary's van was still parked across the street. What do we do now? We move in. That's it? For now. Maya picked up a box and carried it toward the kitchen. Olivia followed with another. The movers finished shortly afterward and drove away, leaving the house quieter than it had been all morning. Maya went upstairs to check where several boxes had been placed. while Olivia stayed in the kitchen, sorting chargers, cleaning supplies, and the items they would need that evening. For several minutes, neither woman was in the garage. Outside, Gary's van moved. It had been parked across the street. Now it rolled farther down Hawthorne Lane and stopped near the side of the property. No one inside the house noticed. When Maya came downstairs, Olivia was opening another box. "Did you leave the garage light on?" Maya asked. Olivia looked toward the hallway. "I don't think so." Maya walked to the garage. The interior light was burning. She stopped at the doorway and looked around. Nothing appeared damaged. The shelf was still out of position. The clean rectangle remained visible. Several moving boxes now stood near the center of the garage, partially blocking the rear wall. Maya switched off the light. Then she looked toward the side entrance. The door was closed. She tested it once and returned to the kitchen. Neither she nor Olivia saw Gary's van pull away from the side of the house a few minutes later. A few minutes later, Olivia carried an empty cardboard box toward the garage. She was looking for the coffee maker they had packed separately, but she stopped as soon as she stepped through the doorway. A gray plastic storage tote was sitting behind two moving boxes near the rear wall. She stared at it. The container was not theirs. Olivia moved closer but did not touch it. A printed label was fixed to the lid. Crestwood Heights, HOA financial records. "Mom." Maya heard the change in her daughter's voice and came immediately. Olivia pointed toward the tote. "That wasn't there before." Maya stopped several feet away. "Don't touch it." "I wasn't going to." Maya took out her phone and photographed the tote exactly where it sat. Then she opened the pictures she had taken when they first entered the garage. The earlier images showed the same area clearly. No gray tote. She enlarged one photograph and compared the position of the moving boxes. Olivia leaned closer. "There. You can see the whole floor." Maya nodded. And nothing was there. Olivia looked toward the side door. "Gary, we don't know that. He was parked right outside." The garage light came back on. "Now HOA records suddenly appear in here. That gives us a sequence. It doesn't give us the person yet." Olivia exhaled in frustration. How much more obvious does it need to be? Obvious isn't enough if someone is trying to make this look criminal. That silenced her. Maya checked the side door again. It was closed, and there was no visible damage around the frame. She did not open the tote. Instead, she photographed the label, the surrounding floor, and the position of every nearby box. Olivia watched her. What if those are the records Patricia says are missing? They probably are. And if somebody finds them here, they'll ask how they got here. Olivia looked at her mother. "And right now, they're in our garage." Yes, for the first time that afternoon, Maya's voice carried more concern than irritation. The dispute had changed. A lock could be removed. An HOA notice could be challenged. Even the interrupted electricity could be documented. But property reported missing from an association and discovered inside Maya's garage could create a much more serious problem. Olivia picked up her phone. "Should we call someone?" Maya considered it. Before she could answer, Patricia's voice came from outside. "Nobody touch anything." Olivia turned toward the garage opening. Patricia was standing near the driveway with Gary beside her. Two men wearing Garrison Property Security uniforms had joined them. Several residents were gathering along the sidewalk. Patricia raised her voice enough for everyone to hear. "The missing association records have been located at 27 Hawthorne Lane." Olivia looked at Maya. "How does she know?" Maya kept her eyes on Patricia. "That's the right question." Patricia stopped at the edge of the driveway. "Miss Williams, step away from the container." Maya did not move toward it. "I'm already away from it. For everyone's protection, the area needs to be secured." "By whom?" "Association security." Gary stepped forward. "We need access to the garage." "No." Patricia's voice became firmer. "Those records belong to Crestwood Heights. If they're yours, you can report them recovered. We need to take possession of them. You're not entering my house." Gary pointed toward the tote. "You can't keep association property after being notified that it's stolen." Olivia responded before Maya could. "We didn't put it there." Gary looked at her. "Then how did it get into your garage?" "That's what I'd like you to explain." "Olivia," Maya said. Her daughter stopped. Maya turned back to Patricia. "When did you first learn those records were here?" Patricia hesitated. Gary identified them. Maya looked at Gary. From where? He gave no immediate answer. You were across the street, Maya continued. The tote is behind 2 moving boxes. How did you identify it from there? Gary glanced toward the garage. I saw enough. From where? Patricia interrupted. This isn't the time for an interrogation. Maya looked at her. You just announced to the neighborhood that missing financial records were found inside my home. I think asking how you knew they were here is reasonable. Several residents exchanged looks. Patricia seemed to notice. She opened her folder. We have already documented the matter. What happens next depends on your cooperation. Maya nodded toward the tote. You wanted access to this garage earlier. I refused. Now the exact records you said were missing appear inside after Gary spent most of the day near my property. Gary's voice hardened. Be careful. With what? With accusing people of crimes. Maya held his gauze. I haven't accused you. I'm establishing the timeline. Gary said nothing. Olivia quietly opened the photos from earlier that morning. Mom, Maya looked. Olivia held up the screen. The first garage picture has a timestamp. So does Patricia's email about the missing records. Maya checked both. The garage photograph came first. The email announcing the missing records came later. Maya showed the screen to Patricia. When I entered this house, that tote was not in the garage. Your notice about missing records was sent afterward. Patricia's mouth tightened. That proves nothing about what happened before you arrived. No, but it proves the tote appeared after I had already documented the garage. One of the residents spoke from the sidewalk. Patricia, if the box wasn't there this morning, how did it get there? Patricia turned toward him. We are not going to conduct an HOA investigation in the street. Maya replied. Then stop presenting your conclusions in the street. Patricia looked back at her. The controlled politeness she had maintained all day was starting to fail. She pulled out her phone. If you refuse to release association property, I have no choice but to report this. Maya watched her unlock the screen. Report exactly what you know. Patricia stared at her for a moment, then dialed. Gary moved closer to the driveway but stayed outside the property line. Olivia lowered her voice. She's calling the police. I know. Do you want me to make a call too? Maya looked at her daughter. Not yet. Patricia turned away and lifted the phone to her ear. When the dispatcher answered, her voice became formal again. This is Patricia Whitmore, president of the Crestwood Heights Homeowners Association. I need officers sent to 27 Hawthorne Lane. Missing HOA financial records have been located inside the residence, and the occupant is refusing to release them. Maya heard every word, especially one. Occupant, not owner. She looked toward the gray tote sitting untouched inside the garage. Someone had placed it there. Now, Patricia was trying to make the police believe it had always belonged in Maya's story. Patricia ended the call and slipped the phone back into her folder. Officers are on the way. Until they arrive, nobody touches the records. Maya remained near the garage entrance. I already told you we weren't touching them. Gary opened the black case he had brought with him and removed a printed document. He walked to the edge of the driveway without crossing onto Maya's property. This is an emergency property protection notice, he said. Garrison Security has been directed to secure the garage and prevent removal of association property. Maya held out her hand. Let me see it. Gary hesitated before passing it over. The page carried the Crestwood Heights logo at the top and Garrison Property Security at the bottom. Patricia's signature appeared above a paragraph authorizing Gary's company to restrict access to property connected with an HOA investigation. Maya read the entire page. There was no court seal, no county filing number, and no signature from a judge or law enforcement officer. She handed it back. This isn't a court order. It doesn't need to be, Gary said. It's an emergency security authorization, signed by Patricia. She's the HOA president. That gives her authority over association business. It doesn't give you possession of my garage. Gary folded the document once. The records inside belong to the HOA. That still doesn't give you permission to enter my house. Patricia stepped closer to him. Maya, this is becoming unnecessarily difficult. We are trying to preserve financial records, while police respond. You called the police because you said those records were found here. Let the officers decide what needs to be preserved. Gary shook his head. If something disappears before they arrive, That's going to look very bad. Olivia stared at him. Are you accusing us of planning to destroy evidence now? I'm saying the scene needs to remain secure. It is secure, Maya said. You're standing outside. We're standing outside. And the container hasn't been touched. One of the residents on the sidewalk spoke. Then why does Gary need to go in? Gary turned toward the man. Because that's what security contractors do. The resident frowned. I've lived here for 19 years. I don't remember the HOA hiring private security to enter somebody's garage. Patricia answered before Gary could. This is an unusual situation, Mr. Keller. So was locking the new owner out of her house, another resident said. The comment caused several people to look toward Patricia. Maya did not join the argument. She took out her phone instead. Olivia came closer. What do you need? Save every HOA email from today. Keep the originals. They're already on my phone. Back them up. Olivia nodded. And the pictures from this morning? Keep those too. Don't edit them or crop them. Olivia looked toward Gary. What about the video I took while the movers were here? Maya turned to her. What? Video. I left my phone recording for part of the move. I was going to make a time lapse. Save the original file. Olivia opened her phone immediately. Gary watched them. What exactly are you doing? Maya did not look up. Preserving what happened. Patricia gave a short sigh. No one is disputing that you moved in today. That isn't the only thing that happened today. Patricia's expression changed slightly. Maya continued checking the documents she had already saved. The first photographs of the garage had been taken before Patricia's email reporting the missing records. The gray tote had not been present. The utility confirmation showed the electric service had remained active. The independent locksmith had removed a cylinder installed without Maya's consent. None of those facts proved who had placed the tote in the garage, but together they made the day increasingly difficult to explain as a simple misunderstanding. Olivia finished backing up the files. Done. Maya nodded. Good. Patricia turned toward the residents who had gathered. For everyone's information, the HOA is cooperating fully with law enforcement. No one should interfere with the investigation. Maya looked at her. There is no investigation yet. You made a call. Patricia's tone sharpened. Missing financial records have been located inside your garage, and you knew where they were before I did. That is not what happened. Then explain what happened. Patricia did not answer. Gary stepped in again. Enough. Step away from the driveway, and let us secure the property until officers arrive. Maya looked at him. No. This is your last chance to cooperate voluntarily. You don't have the authority to remove me from my property. I have an authorization from the HOA. You have a piece of paper. Patricia signed. Gary's jaw tightened. Maya kept her voice level. If the police tell me to move while they assess the situation, I'll deal with the police. I'm not surrendering my house to a private contractor because you printed a notice. Several residents were listening closely now. One older woman spoke from near the sidewalk. Patricia, are those the reserve fund records you mentioned at the last board meeting? Patricia turned quickly. Some of the missing documents may involve reserve accounts. The woman's concern became immediate. Those are our dues. Another resident asked, how much money are we talking about? This is not the time, Patricia replied. It became the time when you called the police in front of all of us, the man said. The mood changed. Until then, the neighbors had been watching a dispute involving a new homeowner. Now, they understood that the missing records might concern money they had paid into the association for years. Patricia raised her voice. The board will be briefed when the facts are established. Maya noticed Gary looking increasingly uncomfortable. Olivia moved closer to her mother. She's losing them. Don't worry about them. But they're starting to question her. Let them ask their own questions. Olivia glanced toward the gray tote. What if the police believe her first? Maya looked at her daughter for a moment. Then we give them the facts in order. And if that isn't enough? Maya did not answer immediately. From farther down Hawthorne Lane came the faint sound of tires turning onto the street. Gary straightened. Patricia closed her folder and moved closer to the curb. Olivia looked toward the approaching vehicles, then back at Maya. Do you want me to make the call? Maya's expression remained calm. No. Olivia understood the answer, although no one else could have known what she meant. Maya slipped her phone into her pocket and stepped into the open driveway with both hands visible. "Let them come here for the same reason they would come for anyone else," she said. "Then let the facts do their job." Two marked patrol cars turned onto Hawthorne Lane and stopped near the curb. 3 officers stepped out and immediately began assessing the scene. Patricia near the street with her folder, Gary and the 2 private security guards beside the driveway, several residents gathered along the sidewalk, and Maya standing on her own property with Olivia behind her. Patricia moved first. "Officers, I'm Patricia Whitmore, president of the Crestwood Heights HOA. Thank you for coming. We have missing financial records inside that garage, and the occupant is refusing to release them." One of the officers, a younger man named Brooks, looked toward Maya. "Ma'am, are you the resident?" "I'm the owner," Patricia cut in. "That is part of the dispute." Maya did not look at her. "It isn't." A second officer, Sergeant Thomas Mercer, stepped forward. He appeared older than Brooks and spoke in a calm, controlled tone. "All right. Nobody talks over anybody else. Mrs. Whitmore, you'll have your turn. Ma'am, I'll need identification and whatever ownership documents you have available." Maya reached slowly for her phone and wallet. "I have both." She handed Mercer her driver's license first, then opened the electronic documents she had saved earlier. "The deed is recorded. The title company confirmed the transfer this morning. County records show no lien or court order restricting possession. The electric utility also confirmed there was no authorized service interruption." Mercer reviewed the documents while Brooks listened to Patricia's explanation. Patricia opened her folder. The HOA had the house under a security hold before Miss Williams entered. Later, we discovered association financial records were missing. Those same records are now inside her garage. Gary handed Brooks the emergency property protection notice. "Our company was instructed to secure the property until the records could be recovered." Brooks read the page. "This came from the HOA?" "Yes." "Court order?" Gary hesitated. "It's an association authorization." Brooks looked at him. "That wasn't my question." Gary's expression tightened. Mercer finished reviewing Maya's county record. "This shows Miss Williams as the recorded owner." Patricia stepped closer. "Ownership isn't the only issue. We have stolen association property inside." "Reported stolen," Maya said. Patricia turned toward her. "You know exactly what I mean." "I know what you reported." Mercer raised a hand, one at a time. He looked toward the open garage. The gray tote remained untouched where Maya and Olivia had found it. "Has anyone entered the garage since the call?" "No," Maya said. Gary answered at the same time. "We've been trying to secure it." Mercer looked between them. "Trying is not what I asked." Gary stopped talking. "No one has entered," Maya said. Mercer nodded. "Good. Keep it that way for now." Patricia immediately objected. "Sergeant, those are HOA records. We need to take custody before anything happens to them." Mercer looked at her. "Right now, I don't know what they are, how they got there, or who has lawful control of them. Nobody is taking anything until we sort that out." Gary moved toward the driveway. "I can show you exactly where they are." Maya stepped no closer to him, but her voice became firm. "He does not have permission to enter my property." Brooks turned toward her. "Ma'am, we need everyone to cooperate. I am cooperating with you. I am not consenting to a private contractor entering my home." Gary kept walking. Maya stayed where she was. "Gary, stop." He ignored her and reached the edge of the driveway. Brooks moved between them. "Ma'am, step back." Maya did not advance. "I'm already standing on my property. I need you farther back while we deal with this." Maya looked at Mercer, then at Brooks. Gary took another step toward the garage. Maya repeated, "He does not have my consent to enter." Brooks' posture changed. His hand moved toward the baton at his belt. "Ma'am, I'm telling you one last time. Step back now." Olivia's face tightened. "Mom." Maya raised one hand slightly toward her daughter. "It's fine." Then she looked directly at Brooks. "Before you do anything else, look at my identification again." Brooks frowned. "I already saw your license." "Look at the name." Mercer had moved closer. Brooks glanced down at the identification he was still holding, then read the full name more carefully. Maya Renee Williams. His expression changed. Mercer looked over his shoulder. For a moment, neither officer said anything. Then Mercer straightened. "Chief Williams?" The street went silent. Gary stopped moving. Patricia stared at Maya. "Chief." Brooks lowered his hand from the baton. "Chief, I didn't realize. You weren't supposed to." Maya's voice remained calm. Brooks looked embarrassed. "Ma'am, I apologize." "Don't." Mercer studied her. Maya continued. "Finish the call exactly as you would if you had never seen my name." Patricia looked from one officer to the other. "You're saying she's the police chief?" Mercer answered. "Yes, ma'am. Chief Maya Williams." Patricia's face changed completely. "I had no idea." Maya looked at her. "You didn't need to." Patricia opened her mouth, but Maya continued before she could speak. "My job does not make the deed more valid. It does not change who owns this house, and it does not explain how your financial records appeared in my garage." Mercer nodded once. "That's where we start." Gary took a small step backward. Patricia recovered enough to speak. "Sergeant, whatever her position is, those records were found inside her property." Maya turned toward Mercer. "And that should be investigated." Patricia looked almost relieved. Then Maya added, "But start at the beginning." Mercer glanced at the sealed lock cylinder, the photographs on Maya's phone, and the gray tote in the garage. "What beginning?" Maya held up the bag containing the lock Gary had installed. "This one." Gary's face tightened. Maya continued. "Before anyone found a box in my garage, someone changed my lock, interfered with my electrical access, and tried to keep me outside long enough for something large to be removed from the back of that garage." Several residents looked toward the clean, rectangular area on the floor. Mercer did too. Maya looked at Patricia. "And the first question is why?" Mercer asked everyone to stay where they were while he took control of the scene. Brooks moved toward the garage entrance, but stopped outside it. Gary and the two private security guards were told to remain near the sidewalk, and Patricia was asked to keep her folder closed until Mercer was ready for it. Maya handed Mercer the sealed bag containing the lock cylinder. "This was on the front door when we arrived," she said. "The independent locksmith removed it after the title company and county confirmed ownership." Mercer examined the label Maya had written on the bag. "Who installed it?" Maya looked toward Gary. Gary answered reluctantly. "My company did." "Who requested the work?" "Mrs. Whitmore." Mercer turned to Patricia. "You authorized a contractor to change the lock on a house already sold to Miss Williams?" Patricia opened her folder despite being told not to. The association had unresolved concerns regarding the property. "What concerns?" "Compliance issues." Mercer waited. Patricia looked down at the paperwork. They were still being reviewed. Maya took out her phone. "The title company confirmed the closing was complete before I arrived. The county record listed me as the sole owner. There was no court order preventing occupancy." Mercer looked back at Patricia. "Did you have any legal order authorizing you to keep her out?" "No. But the HOA has security responsibilities." "Responsibilities are not the same as possession rights." Patricia pressed her lips together. Gary spoke from the sidewalk. "I was acting under the security contract." Mercer looked at him. "Does that contract authorize you to change a homeowner's locks without consent?" Gary did not answer. Maya continued. "There was also a Garrison Property Security seal on the exterior breaker box. The electric utility confirmed the service was still active and that they had not authorized a shutoff." Brooks looked at Gary. "Did your company touch the breaker?" "No." Maya did not react. Mercer noticed. "You disagree?" "I don't know who changed it," Maya said. "I know whose company name was on the seal." Gary folded his arms. "Anybody could have put that there." "That's possible," Maya replied. Her answer seemed to frustrate him more than an accusation would have. Mercer glanced at her. "What happened after you got inside?" Maya opened the first photographs from the garage. She showed him the displaced metal shelf, the 4 drag marks, and the large clean rectangle on the concrete floor. These were taken shortly after the garage opened. Mercer enlarged the image. "Something had been sitting there. That's what it looked like." "How recently?" "I can't establish an exact time. The drag marks were fresh, and the surrounding dust had not been disturbed in the same way." Patricia interrupted. "That could have been anything left by the previous owner." Maya looked at her. "Maybe." Patricia seemed surprised. Maya continued. "But you were standing across the street when the garage opened." and you looked directly at that spot. That's your interpretation. Yes. Which is why I photographed the floor instead of treating your expression as evidence. Several residents exchanged looks. Mercer nodded toward Maya's phone. What happened next? Mrs. Whitmore sent an email stating that HOA financial records were missing. Olivia stepped forward with her own phone. I saved the original. Mercer checked the timestamp. Maya showed him the earlier garage photograph. This picture was taken before that email was sent. Brooks compared the times. So at the time you first entered the garage, the HOA had not yet sent notice that records were missing. Correct. Patricia raised a hand. The board had already begun discussing the missing materials before the email went out. Mercer turned toward her. When did you first know they were missing? I don't remember the exact minute. Before or after Miss Williams entered the house? Patricia hesitated. I would need to check. Gary looked toward her, then quickly away. Mercer saw it. So check. Patricia opened her phone and searched through several messages. After nearly a minute, she said, "The formal report was created later." That wasn't my question. Patricia's voice tightened. We were dealing with several issues at once. Maya remained silent. Mercer looked at her again. When did the gray tote appear? After the moving crew left. Olivia took over. I went into the garage to find a kitchen box. The tote was behind 2 moving cartons. I had never seen it before. Did you touch it? No. Mom told me not to. Maya showed Mercer a second photograph. The gray tote was visible in the same section of the garage that had been clear earlier. Brooks studied both images. Same day? The timestamps are intact, Maya said. Mercer looked toward the tote, then toward Gary, who had access to the garage between these photographs. Maya answered carefully. Olivia and I were inside the house for parts of that period. The movers were leaving. Gary's van remained nearby. Well, Gary stepped forward. That doesn't mean I entered anything. No one said it did, Mercer replied. Olivia suddenly looked at her phone. I might have something else. Everyone turned toward her. I left my phone recording for part of the move. I was making a time lapse. Maya looked at her. Do you still have the original file? Yes. Don't edit it. Mercer held out his hand. Let's see it. Olivia opened the recording and scrubbed through the footage. Most of it showed boxes, movers, and the driveway. Then Gary's white van appeared. It had been parked across the street. A few minutes later, it moved closer to the side of the property. Gary disappeared from the camera's view. The timestamp matched the period when Maya had been upstairs and Olivia had been in the kitchen. Gary stared at the phone. You can't see me entering that garage. Mercer looked at him. No, but now we know you were close enough to have the opportunity. Patricia stepped toward Mercer. This is getting completely out of control. The records are ours. Why are we investigating the security contractor instead of recovering stolen HOA property? Maya finally looked at her. Because you knew the records were in my garage before I did. Patricia's face tightened. Mercer turned toward the gray tote. And now we're going to find out exactly what those records are. Mercer asked Brooks to photograph the gray tote exactly where it sat before anyone moved it. Olivia stepped back toward the kitchen doorway, while Maya remained near the garage entrance. Patricia and Gary were kept outside the driveway with the other residents. Once the position of the tote had been documented, Mercer asked Patricia to identify it. That belongs to the association, she said. Those are the records I reported missing. You can identify the container from here? Mercer asked. It has the HOA label. That tells me what the label says. I'm asking whether you recognize this specific container. Patricia hesitated. Yes. How? We use those totes for financial storage. Maya watched Patricia carefully. Mercer put on gloves and opened the lid. Inside were several binders, folders, printed invoices, and a small external storage drive. He lifted the first binder enough to read the cover. Reserve Fund Reconciliation. A woman standing near the sidewalk spoke quietly. That's our reserve account. Patricia turned toward the residents. Please, let the officers handle this. Mercer opened another folder. Vendor payments. Gary looked away. Maya noticed. Sergeant, she said. Check the vendor names before anything gets separated. Mercer looked at her. Something specific? I saw Garrison Property Security on several HOA documents Patricia showed earlier. If these are financial records, I'd like that relationship documented before anyone starts moving pages around. Patricia stepped forward. That is completely inappropriate. You're using your position to direct an investigation involving the HOA. Maya answered without raising her voice. No. I'm pointing out what's already visible. Then she looked at Mercer. You're running the scene. Mercer nodded and continued. The first invoice he removed listed Garrison Property Security as the vendor. The service was described as emergency lock replacement at a Crestwood Heights address. The amount was just under $5,000. The second invoice was for a perimeter security inspection. The amount was almost identical. A third listed camera maintenance. Again, the total fell just below $5,000. One of the older residents frowned. That number matters. Mercer looked toward him. The man introduced himself as Daniel Keller, a longtime HOA member. Any unplanned expense of $5,000 or more is supposed to go before the full board. Patricia immediately responded. There are exceptions for emergency services. Keller shook his head. Not this many. Mercer placed the invoices side by side. Maya leaned close enough to read them without touching. The dates were different, but the formatting was nearly identical. Several invoice numbers were sequential. She looked at Gary. How many emergency calls did your company handle here last quarter? Gary crossed his arms. I don't keep that in my head. You own the company. I said I don't know. Mercer checked another page. This one says after-hours response at 41 Hawthorne Court. Olivia looked up from her phone. There is no Hawthorne Court. Patricia turned toward her. You don't know every street in this community. Olivia had already opened the neighborhood map. There's Hawthorne Lane. There's Crestwood Drive. There's Maple Terrace. No Hawthorne Court. Keller spoke from the sidewalk. She's right. I've lived here almost 20 years. That address doesn't exist. Another resident stepped closer to look at the document from a distance. What did we pay for? Patricia's voice sharpened. We are not auditing the HOA in someone's driveway. Maya looked at her. You called the police to this driveway over these records. Patricia said nothing. Mercer continued through the file. Several more invoices showed the same pattern. Separate charges for security inspections, lock service, emergency access, and equipment checks, each under the threshold Keller had described. Brooks was writing down the vendor names and amounts. Gary shifted his weight. Maya noticed another page beneath the invoices. Sergeant, the reconciliation sheet. Mercer lifted it. The page summarized reserve fund transfers and reimbursements. Several payments went to Garrison Property Security. Farther down, a second company appeared repeatedly. Whitmore Community Consulting. The residents became quiet. Keller looked at Patricia. Whitmore? Patricia's face tightened. It's a consulting entity. Yours? Mercer asked. That isn't relevant to the missing property complaint. Mercer held the page. It may be relevant to the records inside the container you reported stolen. Patricia looked toward Maya. This is exactly what I was afraid would happen. She's turning a property dispute into an attack on me. Maya shook her head. I didn't create the company name. Patricia ignored her. Gary spoke suddenly. Those consulting payments weren't my decision. Patricia turned toward him. Nobody said they were. Gary realized too late that he had answered a question no one had asked. Mercer looked at him. What were they for? I don't know. You just said they weren't your decision. I meant I don't control HOA reimbursements. Maya studied the documents. The pattern was becoming clearer, but she refused to move faster than the evidence. Sergeant, this doesn't prove where the money ultimately went. Mercer nodded. Agreed. But it does show repeated payments to Gary's company, followed by payments to another company carrying Patricia's name. Patricia stepped forward again. You have no idea what those payments represent. You're right, Maya said, which is why the records need to be preserved, not removed by the people named in them. That stopped Patricia. Mercer placed the reconciliation page back with the invoices. No one from the HOA or Garrison Security is taking possession of these records today. Patricia's face changed. These are association documents. They are now part of a disputed incident involving a false access claim, a planted property allegation, and possible financial irregularities. They'll be preserved until the proper authority determines what happens next. Gary looked toward Patricia. She did not look back. Brooks picked up another folder and read the label. Locksmith Services. Gary's shoulders stiffened. Inside were work orders bearing Garrison Property Security's name, including several for emergency lock changes at properties that residents said had never required such work. Then Mercer found a service sheet dated that morning, 27 Hawthorne Lane. The authorization line contained Patricia Whitmore's signature. The stated reason was unauthorized occupancy prevention. Olivia stared at the page, but she already knew Mom owned the house. Maya looked at Patricia. You had that form prepared before you came across the street. Patricia said nothing. Mercer checked the time printed on the work order. It had been created before Maya arrived. The explanation about a sudden compliance concern was no longer holding together. Gary rubbed a hand across his jaw. She told me the house had to stay empty until we got the records out. Patricia spun toward him. Gary, stop talking. Mercer looked directly at Gary. Records out of where? Gary froze. No one spoke. Maya turned toward the back corner of the garage. 4 drag marks still crossed the concrete. The clean, rectangular space was still visible behind the displaced shelf. Then she looked back at Gary. For the first time all day, he had no answer ready. Mercer did not press Gary for an immediate answer. He asked Brooks to note the statement exactly as it had been made, then told everyone to remain outside the garage while he continued documenting the records. Patricia recovered first. He misspoke. Gary looked at her. Patricia continued. This has been a long day. Everyone is tired, and he obviously meant the association records had to be accounted for before the property transfer was complete. The property transfer was complete before this morning, Maya said. Patricia turned toward her. I am not discussing legal technicalities with you. Maya remained calm. Then discuss the timeline with Sergeant Mercer. Mercer looked at Gary. What did Mrs. Whitmore tell you needed to be removed? Gary glanced toward the gray tote. I don't remember her exact words. A minute ago, you remembered enough to say the records. Gary shifted his weight. There were boxes stored here. HOA materials. She wanted the house cleared before the new owner came. Olivia looked toward the empty rectangular area behind the shelf. So something really was stored there. Gary did not answer her. Mercer asked, when did you remove it? I helped move some storage containers early this morning. Patricia stepped toward him. You were performing authorized contractor work. Mercer raised a hand. Mrs. Whitmore. Let him answer. Patricia stopped. Gary looked increasingly uncomfortable. We came before the move-in, he said. That's all. We? Mercer asked. Gary hesitated. One of my employees helped. Where did the material go? To a company storage unit. Patricia interrupted again. Which is completely normal. The records belong to the association. Maya looked at her. Then why did some of them come back? Patricia's eyes moved toward the tote. They didn't come back. Those records were reported missing. Maya took out her phone and opened the first set of garage photographs. Something large was removed before we arrived. The records were not reported missing until after I entered the house. Hours later, one of your labeled containers appeared inside the garage. Patricia folded her arms. You are assuming those events are connected. No. I'm asking whether they are. Mercer turned to Gary. Did you return to this property after Miss Williams entered the house? Gary looked toward Olivia's phone. You already saw the video. It shows your van moving closer. I'm asking you. Gary took a breath. Yes. Why? I had security responsibilities. For a property you had already been told belonged to Miss Williams? Gary said nothing. Mercer continued. Did you enter the garage? No. Did anyone from your company enter? Not that I know of. Olivia frowned. That's not the same as no. Gary looked at her. I said I didn't see anyone enter. Maya noticed the change immediately. You started with no. Now it's, I didn't see anyone. Which one is accurate? Gary stared at her. Patricia stepped between the conversation and the residents. This is becoming absurd. There is no evidence that Gary planted anything. Maya nodded. That's true. Patricia seemed surprised. Maya continued. There is evidence his company changed the lock. There is evidence his company's seal was on the breaker box. There is evidence he returned after we entered the house. There is video placing his van near the side access during the period when the tote appeared. There is also his statement that records were removed before I arrived. Mercer looked at Patricia. And there is still the question of how you knew those records were inside before anyone with lawful access verified them. Patricia's expression tightened. Gary told me. Mercer turned back to Gary. How did you know? Gary looked toward the garage. I saw the container. From where? The street. Brooks walked toward the sidewalk and positioned himself where Gary's van had been parked earlier. He looked through the open garage. From that angle, the rear area was partly blocked by moving boxes. I can't see it from here, he said. Gary pointed farther down. I may have been closer. Brooks moved several yards. The result was the same. You'd need to be near the driveway or side of the property. Gary said nothing. Maya looked at Mercer. There's another point. What? The garage light. Olivia understood immediately. When Mom came downstairs, she asked if I'd left it on. I hadn't. Mercer looked at her. What time? Olivia checked the photos and messages on her phone. Somewhere around early afternoon. After the movers left, Maya added. The side door was closed when I checked it. There was no visible damage. Mercer looked toward Gary's locksmith equipment. If someone had previous access credentials or knowledge of the system, damage might not be necessary. Gary shook his head. That's speculation. Yes, Maya said. Which is why nobody should pretend it's proof. Her restraint caused several residents to look at her differently. She was not trying to force a conclusion. She was separating what could be established from what still needed investigation. Mercer turned to Brooks. Photograph the side access, the garage control panel, and the door hardware. Note that no visible forced entry is present. Brooks nodded. Patricia looked toward the residence. This still does not change the fact that association records were found here. A woman near the sidewalk answered. But now we know you were storing association records in this house before Maya bought it. Patricia faced her. That was an administrative arrangement. Did the board approve it? Patricia did not answer. Daniel Keller spoke next. Did the board approve those payments to Garrison? They were legitimate expenses. That wasn't the question. More residents began murmuring. Patricia's authority was no longer enough to stop them. Maya did not encourage the crowd. She looked at Mercer instead. The people named in those records should not control them from this point forward. I agree, Mercer said. Patricia reacted immediately. Sergeant, these are HOA documents. They contain confidential financial information, which is one reason they need to be preserved. You cannot simply take association property. Mercer remained calm. I'm not making a final determination about ownership of every document. I'm preserving material connected to a disputed report and possible financial misconduct until the appropriate authority reviews it. Gary looked at Patricia. For the first time, she did not seem to have an answer ready. Maya looked toward the lock cylinder she had saved that morning, then toward the tote and the displaced shelf. The entire day was beginning to form a single sequence. The lock had delayed her. The breaker had delayed her. The missing storage had created a secret. The tote had created an accusation. Patricia had tried to control each step separately. Now every step was being documented together. Mercer closed the tote and secured it for transfer. Then he looked at Patricia and Gary. Neither of you leaves yet. We're going to document your statements separately. Patricia's composure weakened. Gary stared at the pavement. Maya stepped back toward Olivia. Her daughter lowered her voice. So this is finally turning around. Maya watched Mercer begin separating Patricia from Gary. Not yet. Olivia looked at her. Maya glanced toward the financial records. Now we find out whether their stories still match when they can't hear each other. Mercer directed Brooks to take Gary farther down the sidewalk while he remained near the driveway with Patricia. The two were separated far enough that neither could hear the other clearly. Maya stayed beside Olivia and did not interfere. Patricia held her folder against her chest. Sergeant, I have already explained the situation. The HOA discovered missing records, and those records were found inside Miss Williams's garage. Mercer opened his notebook. I'm going to ask you for the sequence from the beginning. What time did you first become concerned about 27 Hawthorne Lane? This morning, before Miss Williams arrived? Yes. What caused the concern? Patricia paused. The property had unresolved security issues. What kind? There were association materials connected to the residence. Mercer looked up. Connected how? Patricia hesitated again. Some HOA records had been temporarily stored there. Who approved that? It was an internal administrative decision. By the board. Patricia adjusted her grip on the folder. I handled it under my authority as president. Mercer wrote something down. When did you decide the locks should be changed? The house needed to remain secure until the materials were accounted for. So the lock change was related to the records. Patricia looked toward Maya, then back at Mercer. Partly. That answer was different from what she had said earlier. Maya said nothing. Mercer continued. When did you learn the records were missing? Later in the morning. But you had already ordered the lock changed. Yes, because we knew the house had been used for storage. What exactly were you trying to prevent? Patricia's answer took several seconds. Unauthorized access before we finished clearing the property. Mercer looked toward Maya's recorded deed. The legal owner's access. Patricia's voice hardened. At the time, I did not believe everything had been properly resolved. Did you check the county record before directing Gary to change the lock? No. Did you contact the title company? No. Did you have a court order? No. Mercer stopped writing. Then what did you rely on? The HOA's responsibility to protect the community. Mercer closed his notebook halfway. That still doesn't explain why records later appeared in the garage after Miss Williams had already documented that they weren't there. Patricia looked toward the gray tote, now secured for transfer. I cannot explain what Miss Williams photographed. Can you explain how you knew the records were inside? Gary told me. Before or after you called 911? Before. How did Gary know? You'll have to ask him. Mercer nodded. We are. Farther down the sidewalk, Brooks was questioning Gary. His voice could not be heard, but Gary's posture had changed. He no longer looked confrontational. His arms were at his sides, and he kept glancing toward Patricia. Olivia leaned closer to Maya. They're going to contradict each other. Maybe. You still won't say it. Maya kept her eyes on Mercer and Patricia, because we haven't heard both statements. A few minutes later, Brooks returned alone. Sergeant, I need a word. Mercer stepped aside with him. Patricia tried to listen, but Brooks lowered his voice. After a short exchange, Mercer returned. Mrs. Whitmore, Gary says you instructed him to remove storage containers from the garage early this morning. Patricia's expression tightened. That is not inconsistent with what I told you. He also says you contacted him again after Miss Williams entered the house. Patricia did not answer. Mercer continued. He says you told him one container had to be returned to the property. Patricia stared at Gary, who was still standing down the sidewalk. That is a lie. Maya's attention sharpened. Mercer asked, why would he say that? Because he is protecting himself. From what? Patricia's mouth opened, but no answer came. Brooks joined them. He says the gray tote was the container he returned. Several residents reacted quietly. Olivia looked at Maya. Gary had now admitted what the photographs and timestamps had suggested. Maya remained still. Patricia finally spoke. He is trying to shift responsibility onto me because his company handled the physical storage. Mercer asked, did you instruct him to put the tote back inside 27 Hawthorne? No. Did you know he was going to? No. Then, how did you know where it was before Miss Williams reported finding it? Patricia looked toward the garage. I assumed. Based on what? No answer. Daniel Keller spoke from the sidewalk. Patricia, we've been paying into that reserve fund for years. If those invoices are false, every homeowner here deserves to know. Patricia turned toward him. You are drawing conclusions from incomplete records. Keller shook his head. Then let an independent auditor complete them. Another resident agreed. The board needs to freeze access to the reserve account until this is reviewed. Patricia looked from one resident to another. You cannot make financial decisions in the middle of a police response. Keller answered. We can call an emergency board meeting. For the first time, Patricia no longer controlled the discussion around her. Maya stepped forward only enough for Mercer to hear her clearly. Sergeant, I want to be careful about something. He looked at her. I'm the homeowner and the person whose property was entered. I'm also the chief of this department. I should not be making decisions about what happens to either of them. Mercer nodded. I agree. I want an independent supervisor notified. Preserve the original 911 call, the HOA emails, Gary's work order, the lock cylinder, the utility confirmation, and Olivia's original video. The financial records should go to the appropriate unit outside my direct involvement. Patricia looked at Maya. So now, you're using your position after all. Maya faced her. No, I'm doing the opposite. Patricia gave a bitter laugh. You expect anyone to believe that? My title didn't install that lock. My title didn't create those invoices. And my title didn't put that box in my garage. The residents went quiet. Maya continued. Whatever those records prove should be decided by people who are not standing here because they work for me. Mercer closed his notebook. That's how we'll handle it. He turned to Patricia and Gary. Until the independent review is arranged, neither of you is entering 27 Hawthorne Lane or removing anything from this property. Gary nodded without argument. Patricia did not. She looked at the residents who had trusted her, the officers preserving the records, and the house she had tried all day to control. Then Keller stepped toward the abandoned Garrison sign near the curb, picked it up, and carried it off Maya's driveway. No one applauded. They simply began correcting what should never have happened in the first place. Mercer stepped away from the driveway and contacted an independent supervisor, while Brooks remained near the secured records. Maya stayed beside Olivia and did not approach Patricia or Gary. Within several minutes, Mercer returned. A supervisor from the neighboring division is taking over the financial portion, he said. The records will be transferred under documented custody. Your department will not control the review. Maya nodded. That's appropriate. Patricia looked toward the gray tote. Those documents belong to the HOA. I want it noted that I object to them being removed. It will be noted, Mercer said. Your objection doesn't change the need to preserve them. Gary had remained quiet since admitting that he returned the tote. He stood near his van with one of his employees while Brooks completed another written statement. Patricia walked toward him. Mercer stopped her. Mrs. Whitmore, stay where you are. I only need to speak with my contractor. Not until both statements are finished. Patricia looked at Gary, but he avoided her eyes. Olivia watched the exchange. They trusted each other all morning. Maya spoke quietly. They trusted the plan. That's different? It is when the plan fails. A resident approached Mercer carrying a tablet. I'm on the HOA board, he said. There are meeting minutes and payment approvals stored in our board portal. If those invoices came from the reserve account, I can preserve the records before anyone changes anything. Mercer took his name and contact information. Do not alter the files. Save copies if your board policy allows it, and document when you access them. The man nodded. Understood. Daniel Keller joined him. We should freeze Patricia's financial access. Patricia immediately turned toward them. You do not have the authority to do that without a board vote. Keller remained calm. Then we'll hold a board vote. You cannot call an emergency meeting because of an accusation made in someone's driveway. Keller looked toward the secured tote. This stopped being an accusation when Gary admitted he moved the records. Gary looked up. I said I moved storage. I didn't say I knew anything about her finances. Patricia faced him. You should stop talking. Mercer stepped between them. That's enough. From this point forward, neither of you discusses your statements with each other while we're still documenting the incident. Gary gave a small nod. Patricia said nothing. Maya looked toward the garage. The gray tote had been closed, labeled, and prepared for transfer. The empty rectangular area behind the shelf remained visible. Earlier, it had raised a question. Now it had a documented connection to the records Gary admitted removing before Maya arrived. Brooks approached Maya with the clear bag containing the lock cylinder. Chief, I need to confirm where this came from. The front door. Removed by the independent locksmith? Yes. Do you have his information? Maya opened the receipt on her phone and showed him. Brooks recorded the name and business number. What about the breaker box? The utility technician confirmed there was no company-ordered shutoff. I have the written notice and his service report. Send both to Sergeant Mercer. Keep your originals. Maya nodded. Brooks hesitated. Chief. About earlier. Maya looked at him. He continued. When I told you to step back, you were responding to the information you had. I was also letting the number of people around me push the pace. Maya did not answer immediately. Brooks looked toward Patricia's folder, Gary's uniform, and the residents gathered along the sidewalk. I should have slowed it down. That's the part worth remembering. Maya said. Brooks nodded. Justice isn't justice if it changes when it learns your job title. He looked at her for a moment, then returned to Mercer. Olivia had heard the exchange. You really weren't going to tell him? No. He was reaching for his baton. I saw. And you still waited. Maya looked at her daughter. If the procedure only works after someone recognizes me, then I need to know that. Olivia lowered her voice. That's a hard way to find out. It was. Maya did not pretend otherwise. Another patrol vehicle arrived without sirens. A lieutenant from a neighboring division stepped out and introduced herself as Lieutenant Rachel Monroe. Mercer briefed her privately before bringing her to Maya. Chief Williams, Monroe said. I understand you are the homeowner and complainant. That's correct. I'll handle the independent referral from here. Maya handed her the timeline she had saved on her phone. I don't want operational involvement. You won't have any. Monroe reviewed the materials and then approached Patricia and Gary separately. Patricia immediately began explaining that the HOA had been trying to recover association property. Monroe stopped her. I'm not asking for conclusions yet. I'm asking what you personally did, and when you did it. Patricia's expression tightened. The same method Maya had used all day was now being applied by someone else. Facts first. Gary was interviewed again on the opposite side of the street. Without Patricia beside him, he admitted that she had ordered the morning lock change and told him the house needed to remain inaccessible until the stored records were removed. He also confirmed that part of the material had been taken to a Garrison storage facility. Monroe asked the obvious question. Why was one tote returned? Gary looked toward Patricia. She said we needed something that would explain why the house had been locked down. Patricia's face lost what remained of its composure. That is not what I said, Gary answered, before Monroe could stop him. You told me if the records were found there, nobody would question why we had secured the place. Several residents heard him. No one spoke. Monroe raised a hand. Mr. Garrison, stop. You'll give the rest of your statement separately. Gary looked down. Patricia stood motionless beside the curb. Maya did not feel satisfaction. What she felt was relief that the facts no longer depended on her arguing for them. Monroe returned to the driveway. Chief, we have enough to preserve the financial records. Gary's company records related to this property and the access documentation. The rest will be handled independently. Thank you. Patricia looked toward Maya. For the first time all day, she did not have a document ready. Maya met her eyes but said nothing. There was nothing left to argue about. Lieutenant Monroe asked the residents to give the officers more space while the remaining documents were recorded. The afternoon had begun to cool, but no one seemed interested in going home yet. What had started as a dispute over a new homeowner had become a question about money many of them had paid into the association for years. Daniel Keller stood with two other board members near the sidewalk. One of them had opened the HOA portal on a tablet and was checking the financial permissions attached to Patricia's account. We can suspend electronic transfers until the board meets, he said. It takes 2 officers of the board to approve the restriction. Patricia turned toward them. You will do no such thing. You cannot interfere with association operations because of an allegation that has not been proven. Keller looked at her. We're not deciding guilt. We're protecting the reserve account until an independent audit can tell us what happened. You'll create panic throughout the neighborhood. The police are standing in front of a box containing invoices for work at addresses that don't exist. I think the neighborhood already has questions. Patricia started toward him, but Monroe stopped her with a calm instruction. Mrs. Whitmore, remain near the curb, please. Patricia stopped. Maya watched without getting involved. She had already made her position clear. Whatever happened to Patricia's authority inside the HOA had to come from the board, not from her. Olivia stood beside her mother with her phone in both hands. I've never seen people change sides this fast. Maya looked toward the residents. They aren't supposed to choose sides. You know what I mean. They're finally asking for records instead of taking someone's word for it. Keller approached Maya a few minutes later. Miss Williams, Chief Williams, I owe you an apology. Maya shook her head slightly. You don't have to call me Chief here. He nodded. Maya, then. I saw the email this morning and assumed the HOA had some legitimate reason for what was happening. I should have asked more questions. You can ask them now. We will. Keller looked toward the garage. I've paid dues here for more than 18 years. My wife and I thought that reserve fund was being handled carefully because Patricia always had reports ready at the meetings. Reports can be useful, if they're true. Maya nodded. Keller looked uncomfortable. I think some of us confused paperwork with proof. That happens. He glanced toward Patricia. She always knew more about the rules than anyone else. Knowing the rules and controlling the information are not the same thing. Keller absorbed that before returning to the other board members. Nearby, Monroe had finished another conversation with Gary. Mr. Garrison, your company will preserve all work orders, invoices, access logs, storage records, and communications involving Crestwood Heights until you receive further instructions. Gary nodded. I understand. You will not delete or modify anything. I said I understand. Monroe looked at him for another moment. You will also stay away from 27 Hawthorne Lane unless Miss Williams personally requests your services or you have lawful authority to return. Gary glanced toward Maya. That won't be a problem. Patricia spoke from several feet away. His company has an active contract with this HOA. Monroe turned to her. That contract does not authorize him to enter this homeowner's property. Patricia looked toward Maya. So that's it? You get to take over the neighborhood because you happen to be police chief? Maya answered before anyone else could. No. Patricia gave a short laugh. That is exactly what this looks like. I haven't taken over anything. You have officers preserving HOA documents, board members trying to freeze accounts, residents accusing me of theft. Maya stayed where she was. The officers are preserving documents because you called them here. The board is reviewing its accounts because of what those documents contain. The residents are asking questions because the records involve their money. Patricia's expression hardened. And none of that has anything to do with your position? My position is the reason I stepped away from the investigation. Patricia looked away. Maya continued. If I wanted my title to decide this, I could have announced it when you first crossed the street this morning. I didn't. That silenced Patricia. Monroe stepped closer. Mrs. Whitmore, we're finished with what we need from you at this location for now. You are free to leave, but you are not to enter the Williams property or remove any association records connected to this incident. Patricia looked at the residents one last time. Most avoided her eyes. Keller did not. We're holding an emergency board meeting tonight, he said. Patricia stared at him. Without the president? You can attend as a board member if the bylaws allow it. You won't chair a meeting about your own financial authority. I have not been removed from office. No one said you had. Keller's tone remained respectful. But until we understand those invoices, you aren't going to control the review. Patricia closed her folder. For most of the day, that folder had been enough to make people stop, wait, or obey. Now it was simply a folder. She walked across the street toward her house without another word. Gary got into his van a few minutes later. His 2 employees followed in another vehicle. Before leaving, he removed the remaining Garrison security sign from the grass near Maya's driveway. The van turned onto the main road and disappeared. Only then did Olivia release a long breath. I think that's the first time today nobody is trying to tell us whether we're allowed inside. Maya looked toward the front door. We still have half the house in boxes. That wasn't what I meant. I know. The independent officers prepared the gray tote for transfer. Monroe showed Maya the receipt documenting what had been removed from the property and gave her a contact number for the outside review. You'll be contacted for a formal statement, Monroe said. Because of your position, everything related to the financial investigation will stay outside your chain of command. That's what I want. Monroe nodded. For what it's worth, you handled that carefully. Maya looked toward Olivia. I had a reason to. After the officers began leaving, several residents remained near the driveway. No one knew quite what to say. An older woman finally stepped forward. We still have some boxes in the garage, don't we? Olivia smiled for the first time in hours. A lot of them. The woman rolled up her sleeves. Well, standing out here talking about how sorry we are won't get them into the kitchen. Keller joined her. Where do you want us to start? Maya looked at the neighbors who had spent much of the day watching from across the street. Now they were waiting for instructions from the homeowner. She pointed toward the boxes marked kitchen. Those can go inside. One by one, the residents began carrying them through the front door. No speeches were made. No one tried to excuse what had happened. They simply helped. Olivia picked up a smaller box and looked at her mother. Now can we finish moving in? Maya reached for the next one. Yes. As she carried it inside, the porch light above the door remained on, steady and bright. The first boxes had barely reached the kitchen when Daniel Keller returned to the driveway holding his tablet. Maya, can I show you something? She set down the box in her hands. If it concerns the HOA records, Lieutenant Monroe should see it too. She hasn't left yet. Monroe was standing beside her patrol vehicle, finishing paperwork. Keller approached her first and explained that the Crestwood Heights board portal contained digital copies of payment approvals going back several years. I wasn't looking for anything specific, he said. I was checking whether we could restrict Patricia's access. Then I saw the vendor history. Monroe took the tablet, but did not begin scrolling through it herself. Show me exactly what you opened and don't change anything. Keller navigated back to the board portal. The screen displayed a list of payments from the HOA reserve and operating accounts. Garrison Property Security appeared repeatedly. Monroe looked at Maya. You recognize the pattern from the documents in the tote? Yes. Keller enlarged several entries. Most of these are under the amount that requires a separate board vote. How far under? Monroe asked. Our bylaws require additional approval once an unplanned expense reaches $5,000. The payments shown on the screen repeatedly stopped a few dollars or a few $100s below that threshold. Gary's company had been paid for lock replacements, after-hours inspections, camera maintenance, emergency access, and temporary security services. Keller shook his head. I remember seeing some of these on the monthly reports, but they were presented as routine operating expenses. We never voted on them individually. Maya asked. Who had authority to approve expenses below the threshold? The president and treasurer could approve them without bringing every invoice to the full board. Who was treasurer? Keller hesitated. Patricia handled most of the payment submissions, but the formal treasurer is Martin Reynolds. He's out of state this week. Did Reynolds approve these? I can't tell from this screen, Monroe said. Then don't guess. Keller nodded. Maya noticed the instruction because it matched the discipline she had tried to maintain all day. Monroe photographed the screen showing the portal address and account history, then asked Keller to preserve the original access logs and contact the board's management company. We need them to prevent deletion or modification without changing anything unnecessarily. I'll call them now. Olivia had remained nearby. What about Whitmore Community Consulting? Keller stopped. He returned to the search function and entered the company name. Several transactions appeared, not as large direct payments, but as reimbursements and administrative consulting expenses. Keller stared at the screen. I don't remember voting on any consulting agreement with that company. Maya asked, Does the board portal include contracts? There's a document section. Monroe stopped him before he opened it. Before you go farther, I want the management company involved. If this becomes a financial investigation, we need the records preserved properly. Keller lowered the tablet. Understood. One of the older residents standing nearby spoke. My husband and I have lived here 22 years. We've paid every assessment they asked for. Last year, Patricia told us the reserve account was lower because security costs had gone up. Another resident joined her. She said the same thing when they delayed resurfacing the west entrance. Keller looked increasingly uncomfortable. We kept approving higher dues because we thought the expenses were real. Maya did not respond immediately. The anger in their voices was understandable, but she did not want the sidewalk to become a trial. Then the audit needs to answer that, she said. Not tonight, and not from memory. The older woman nodded slowly. You're right. Monroe's phone rang. She stepped away for several minutes, then returned. The outside financial crimes unit will accept the referral. They want the electronic records preserved, including vendor contracts, payment approvals, association bank statements, and communications involving Garrison Property Security and Whitmore Community Consulting. Keller asked, Can the board freeze Patricia's access now? That is a board governance question. Follow your bylaws and speak with your association attorney. From our side, preserve records and do not destroy or alter anything. Keller nodded. Patricia was still across the street near her house. She had not gone inside. From where she stood, She could see the residents gathered around Keller's tablet. After a few moments, she walked back toward them. "What are you doing?" Keller answered. "Reviewing the vendor payment history." Patricia stopped. "You have no authority to turn private HOA records over to the police." Monroe stepped forward. "He is not turning over anything at this moment. He is preserving records relevant to a referral." Patricia looked at Keller. "You're going to damage this association based on one afternoon of confusion." Keller's expression remained controlled. "If the payments are legitimate, an independent audit will confirm that. They are legitimate. Then you should want the audit." Patricia looked toward Maya. "This is what you wanted." Maya shook her head. "What I wanted was to unlock my front door this morning. You expect me to believe this has nothing to do with you now? It has a lot to do with me. Someone changed my lock, interfered with my power, placed HOA records in my garage, and called police after describing me as an occupant instead of the owner." Patricia said nothing. Maya continued. "But the reserve fund belongs to this community. That part is not mine to decide." Keller looked at Patricia. "I need one answer from you. Did the board approve Whitmore Community Consulting?" Patricia's face remained controlled. "That company provided legitimate administrative services. That wasn't the question." Patricia tightened her grip on the folder. "There were circumstances where formal board approval was not required." Keller looked down at the tablet. "Then there should be records explaining those circumstances." "There are." "Good. The auditor can review them." Patricia glanced at Monroe, then at the residents. For most of the day, she had controlled every exchange by deciding what information other people received. Now, the records were going to be reviewed without her directing the process. Gary was no longer there to support her version. The tote was no longer under her control. The board portal was being preserved, and the residents were asking questions she could not stop. Patricia finally turned away. Before she reached the street, Maya spoke. "Mrs. Whitmore." Patricia stopped but did not face her. Maya kept her voice even. "If everything you did was lawful, the records will show it." Patricia slowly looked back. "And if they don't?" Maya answered without hesitation. "Then the records will show that too." Patricia walked home. No one followed her. Keller shut down the tablet screen and secured it under his arm. Monroe returned to her vehicle to complete the referral. Around Maya, the neighbors began carrying boxes again. The financial investigation would continue somewhere else, under people who had no personal stake in protecting Maya or punishing Patricia. That was exactly how Maya wanted it. For the first time since morning, the truth no longer depended on who could speak the loudest. It depended on what could be verified. Lieutenant Monroe finished the referral call and returned to the driveway with Mercer. The gray tote had already been sealed for transfer, and Brooks had completed the property log for the lock cylinder, the utility confirmation, Olivia's original video, and the photographs Maya had taken throughout the day. Monroe looked toward Maya. "We have what we need from this location for now. The financial records will go to the outside unit, and the association's electronic records will be preserved through the management company." Maya nodded. "Good. You'll be contacted for a formal statement, but you won't be involved in assigning investigators or reviewing their work. That's how I want it." Patricia had remained across the street, but when she heard the conversation, she walked back toward the officers. "So you're taking association records based on accusations made here today?" Monroe faced her. "We're preserving records connected to a police report, a disputed property entry, a contractor's statement, and possible financial irregularities." Patricia looked toward Maya. "And she gets to stand there while her department builds a case against me?" Maya answered before Monroe could. "My department is not building anything." Patricia gave a short, frustrated laugh. "You expect everyone to believe you have no influence here?" "I have influence. That's why I removed myself." Patricia looked at her without speaking. Maya continued. "I'm the homeowner. I'm also the complainant. If I tried to direct what happens next, you'd have every reason to question the process." Mercer closed his notebook. "She's correct. The review is being handled outside her command." Patricia's attention shifted to the residents. Daniel Keller and the two other board members were still discussing an emergency meeting. One of them had already contacted the HOA management company and confirmed that changes to financial permissions could be made only through a formal board process. Keller walked toward Patricia. We're meeting tonight. Patricia frowned. You cannot remove me without following the bylaws. No one is removing you on the sidewalk. Then what exactly are you doing? Freezing any non-essential financial activity until the board reviews the accounts and speaks with counsel. You'll disrupt vendor services. We'll deal with that. Patricia looked toward the residents gathering near him. You have no idea what you're doing. Keller's voice remained calm. That may be part of the problem. For years, we let one person know everything while the rest of us approved whatever appeared in front of us. A woman standing behind him nodded. We trusted you. Patricia looked at her. And I protected this community. The woman's expression hardened. Then, an audit should protect you. Patricia had no response. Maya watched the exchange but stayed out of it. The HOA had to correct its own governance. If residents only replaced Patricia's authority with Maya's, they would have learned nothing. Gary stood beside his van while Brooks finished speaking with him. His earlier confidence was gone. Monroe approached him next. Mr. Garrison, you are not to return to this property without the owner's permission or lawful authority. Gary nodded. You also need to preserve all communications with Mrs. Whitmore regarding 27 Hawthorne Lane, along with invoices, access records, storage logs, and work orders connected to Crestwood Heights. I understand. No deletions. No revisions. I said I understand. Patricia looked at him. Gary avoided her eyes. She stepped toward him. We need to speak before you leave. Monroe stopped her. Not about your statements today. Patricia looked angry. He works for the association. He can speak with counsel if he chooses. He should not coordinate his account with yours. Gary opened the van door. Patricia lowered her voice. Gary. He finally looked at her. I already told them what happened. That is not what happened. He shook his head. You told me to keep the house empty until we moved the records. Then when she started taking pictures, you told me we needed a reason for why the place had been secured. Patricia's face tightened. Monroe immediately stepped in. That's enough. Both of you stop discussing it. Gary got into the van. Before closing the door, he looked once toward the garage. I should never have touched that lock. He did not apologize directly to Maya, and she did not ask him to. The van pulled away. Patricia remained near the curb. Maya looked at her. Patricia spoke quietly. You think this makes you better than me? No. You stood there all day, waiting for everyone to discover who you were. That wasn't what I was waiting for. Then what? The facts. Patricia shook her head. You could have ended all of this when I first walked across the street. Maya answered evenly. I could have changed how you treated me. That isn't the same as changing what you did. Patricia said nothing. Maya continued. My title didn't install that lock. My title didn't create those invoices. And my title didn't put that box in my garage. The residents nearby had gone quiet. This isn't about whether you knew who I was, Maya said. It's about whether you believed you could control a house that wasn't yours, money that belonged to other people, and a story you expected everyone else to accept. Patricia lowered her eyes. For the first time that day, she had no folder open and no notice in her hand. Monroe stepped forward. Mrs. Whitmore, you are free to leave. You will be contacted about the independent review. Patricia looked at Maya one last time, then crossed the street toward her house. No one followed her. Keller turned toward Maya. We should have questioned things sooner. Maya looked at the residents around him. You can question them now. He nodded. A few minutes later, the remaining officers began packing their equipment. Brooks handed Maya a receipt, listing the items removed from her property for preservation. Everything is documented. Maya checked it before putting it away. Brooks smiled faintly. Of course you checked. I check paperwork. I noticed. He started toward the patrol car, then stopped. Chief? Maya looked at him. I won't forget what happened before I recognized your name. Good. Brooks nodded and left. As the last patrol vehicle pulled away, Keller picked up another box near the garage. What room? Olivia pointed toward the front door. Kitchen. He carried it inside. Another neighbor followed with a lamp. A third collected the bottled water left near the SUV and brought it to the porch. There was no formal apology from the neighborhood. Instead, people began helping with the work that had been interrupted all day. Maya watched them for a moment before reaching for another box herself. Justice had not finished its work. The audit had not started, the financial records had not been fully examined, and no final decision had been made about Patricia or Gary. But the process no longer belonged to the people who had tried to control it. For that evening, that was enough. By the time the last neighbor carried a box through the front door, the sun had dropped behind the houses on Hawthorne Lane. The officers were gone. Gary's van was gone. And Patricia's house across the street had gone dark, except for one downstairs lamp. Daniel Keller set a box beside the kitchen island and wiped his hands on his jeans. That should be the last one from the garage. Olivia looked around at the stacks lining the walls. I'm pretty sure the boxes are multiplying. Keller smiled. That happens on moving day. An older woman who had helped carry in several smaller boxes placed 2 bottles of water on the counter. You'd have had enough excitement for one Saturday. More than enough, Olivia said. The woman looked at Maya. I'm sorry we stood across the street for so long. Instead of asking what was happening, Maya appreciated that she did not try to explain it away. Thank you for saying that. Keller glanced toward the front windows. The board meeting starts later tonight. We'll request an independent audit and temporarily restrict financial access until council tells us what steps are proper. Maya nodded. Follow your bylaws and document everything. Keller gave a tired smile. I think all of us learned something about documentation today. He offered his hand. Welcome to Crestwood Heights, Maya. She shook it. Thank you. The neighbors left gradually, taking empty water bottles and scraps of packing material with them. No one made a speech. No one promised that the neighborhood would suddenly become different. They simply said good night and walked home. That felt more honest to Maya. When the door finally closed, Olivia leaned against the kitchen island. Are we actually alone? I think so. No HOA president? No. No private security? No. No police cars? Maya looked through the front window. None. Olivia took a long breath. Good. Because I'm starving. She found her phone beneath a roll of packing tape and ordered 2 pizzas from a nearby restaurant. 1 pepperoni and 1 vegetable. While they waited, Maya opened the box marked First Night. Inside were the things they had expected to need before unpacking everything else. 2 mugs, coffee filters, paper plates, clean towels, chargers, and basic toiletries. Olivia lifted one of the mugs. I forgot we packed these. That was this morning. It feels like 3 days ago. Maya almost laughed. The porch light was visible through the front window. It had been dead when they arrived. But now it burned steadily above the door. Olivia noticed her looking at it. At least the electricity works. That's a good start. The pizzas arrived while they were still arranging basic kitchen supplies. Maya confirmed the address with the driver, paid him, and carried the boxes inside. They ate at the kitchen island because the dining table remained unassembled in the living room. For several minutes, neither talked about Patricia, Gary, the HOA, or the officers. Olivia told Maya which boxes she planned to avoid opening until morning. Maya told her she would not be allowed to leave for college again until the coffee maker was found. The ordinary conversation helped more than either of them admitted. Halfway through her second slice, Olivia became quiet. Mom, Maya looked up. You could have told them who you were this morning. Yes. When Patricia first came over. Yes. Or when Gary blocked the driveway. Maya put down her paper plate. Olivia continued. You could have made 1 phone call. You could have shown them your ID. Gary probably would have backed off immediately. Maybe. Then why didn't you? Maya looked toward the front door, because the question had followed them all day. Even when Olivia had not asked it directly. Because being chief wasn't what gave me the right to open that door. Olivia watched her for a moment. The deed did. Maya smiled. Exactly. Olivia looked down at her plate. But when Officer Brooks recognized you, everything changed. The way people reacted changed. That's what I mean. Maya shook her head. The ownership record didn't change. The utility record didn't change. The lock didn't suddenly become unauthorized. The invoices didn't become suspicious because somebody called me chief. Olivia nodded slowly. They were already what they were. Yes. Maya picked up her glass of iced tea. A title can make people listen faster. It can make them more careful. But if justice only becomes careful after it learns who you are, then something is wrong. Olivia thought about that. You really wanted them to treat you the way they would treat anyone else. I wanted the facts to survive without needing my position to protect them. And they did. Eventually, Olivia smiled slightly. You're still going to check every email Patricia ever sent, aren't you? No. Olivia raised an eyebrow. The independent investigators will. That might be worse for her. That isn't our concern tonight. Maya looked around at the boxes still waiting to be opened. Tonight, we move in. They finished eating and cleaned the paper plates from the counter. Olivia took the leftover pizza to the refrigerator while Maya walked through the front hall. Outside, Hawthorne Lane was quiet. The Garrison signs had been removed. The unauthorized lock was gone. The breaker box no longer carried the company's seal. Only the house remained. Maya stepped onto the porch for a moment and looked at the number beside the door. 27 Hawthorne Lane. Nothing about it looked different from when they had arrived that morning. But now, no one was standing in the driveway claiming authority over it. Maya went back inside. Olivia was waiting near the kitchen. You locking up? Yes. Maya closed the front door. She took out the new key provided by the independent locksmith, inserted it into the lock she had authorized, and turned her wrist. The cylinder moved smoothly. There was no resistance, only a quiet click. Olivia smiled from the kitchen. Maya left the key in her hand for a moment, before switching off the hallway light. This time, the key turned. The lesson from Maya's story is simple. Truth should never depend on status, influence, or the title beside someone's name. Real justice begins when facts are respected, authority is questioned responsibly, and people choose integrity over fear, convenience, or blind loyalty. Maya did not win because she was powerful. She won because she stayed calm, protected the evidence, trusted the law, and refused to let anger decide her actions. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end of this story. Your time and attention truly mean a great deal to us. We would also love to hear your thoughts. Did you enjoy the way this story was told? Was the pacing clear and engaging? Were there any moments you felt could have been stronger or more emotional? Your feedback helps us improve every story we share. And if you have experienced, witnessed, or heard a meaningful story about justice, betrayal, courage, community, or someone standing up for what was right, please consider sharing it with the channel. Your story may inspire a future episode and remind someone listening that even quiet courage can make a difference. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only.